Okay, so we have one final talk, and this is going to be very different, and it's going to be from me. And what's really, really interesting about this is I'm not a cryptographer. I don't know very much about cryptography. And yet here I am standing in front of you in a conversation about cryptography because I do have something very interesting to say. But I want to start by talking together a little bit about the internet. When I graduated from university, my training and my first job was actually in broadcast engineering. I was a TV engineer, okay? And when I graduated and I got a job producing a television show, my mother was very happy because when people said, "Oh, what is David doing now? He graduated." "Yes, he works in TV. He puts on this show." And my mother liked that because she could tell everybody what I did and she was proud of that. Okay. And in 1999, I changed jobs, I changed careers, and I went to work for ICANN, the IP address registry for North America. And that meant I was helping manage IP addresses. Now, my mother was born in 1945. And in 1999, she had no idea what that meant. It's 2023, and I'm still not entirely sure she knows what that means. But for the last 24 years, I haven't really been able to explain to my mother what it is I do. And that's, again, because she was born in 1945. And at that time, the most advanced technology in her house was a radio. And later, in her teenage years, it was a television. And then it got cool. The television became color. And it wasn't until she was in her 60s that she started using every day the internet. And she got, she had a laptop, she had a desktop at her work. But what really made this thing alive for her was when she got her smartphone in the late 2000s or the early 2010s. And it was really interesting for me, as someone who grew up with computers, to watch my mother on her phone, because what we like to do is we like to play Scrabble, right? The word game, putting together words. But my mother tried to play it with me on her phone, and she couldn't. And the reason she couldn't is because when she used her finger to try and move the tiles from her rack to the board, she didn't understand intuitively how to push down on the screen and drag it up and move it to the right spot. She didn't have that skill. It was something completely new to her. So she starts to learn this whole internet thing, and she starts to ask me more and more. And the best question she ever asked is, I don't get how this works. I don't get that how I can just sit in my living room in New York, in the United States, and I can talk to anybody around the world, and it works the same for everybody. Whether you're in Moscow, whether you're in Oslo, whether you're in Johannesburg, no matter where you are, the whole thing works. And it's really interesting if you think about that. Why does it work? Why is the internet essentially the same for everyone? We'll ignore a little bit about governmental content controls or the company you work for blocking sites. We'll ignore that just a little bit. For the most part, underlying it all works the same. And why is that? Well, there are a couple answers to that, but the answer I'm focused in on right now is interoperability. We all speak the same language. We all have we've all adopted the same standards, and we've adopted them voluntarily. Now that's interesting, and I also think that's really kind of cool because I'm here in Norway. I don't live in Norway, I live in the United States. So what does that mean when I get here? My plugs don't work. The charger for my Mac, the charger for my phone. Countries around the world have decided we're not going to standardize on plugs. We're not going to standardize on the voltages and the shapes of the plugs, which means every time we travel to different countries, we have to bring adapters with us. They standardized indeed a lot. When we use our cell phones and we talk to each other over SMS, some of us get a blue message, and some of us get a green message. Because these things, which are super, super important to most of us in this world, we can't even use the same standards to talk to each other on the application layer, right? But we are using the same standards to build internet. It's a voluntary thing, right? The standards, for the most part, the internet standards are developed at the IETF, and people adopt the standards that they like. Not all the standards at the IETF are used. Not all of them are good. In fact, a lot of them stink. They're stupid. But the ones that aren't stupid, or the ones that actually have utility, everyone's chosen to adopt. And the reason they've chosen to adopt is because they want everybody to be able to use their thing, or they want all their users to be able to go use your thing. And the only way that works is if we use the same standards. Now, in order for everything that my mother and everything that all of us do on the internet, in order for it to work, there are two standards really that the whole thing is built atop. BGP for routing. The whole thing relies on this standard that was finalized in 1995 by a guy named Yakov Rector at IBM. We had created this thing called BGP to exchange routing information across different networks. It didn't scale very well, and in 1995 we came up with version 4 of it, and it solved all sorts of scaling problems. Now it is almost 30 years later, and we're using the same standard today at a much, much bigger scale than we ever were in the 1980s and the 1990s. We're still using it. It's BGP. But the other thing that we need to make sure all of this works is the DNS. Now, Lehman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't supposed to be like that. DNS is just an application, okay? It's nothing special, except it is, because when it was invented in 1983 to solve problems, very small scale scaling problems with email and with sharing how the information was distributed about names. The gentleman who created it, Paul Makapetras, I think very accidentally solved what I think is the most difficult problem to solve there is in computer science, which is scaling. This thing scales infinitely, especially these days with the cheapness of memory, the cheapness of processing, and just the raw amount of computing power we have in this world. We can't outscale the DNS. We can't outrun the DNS. It's just, it scales. So it's used. It works. So people use it and they try and jam all sorts of things into it. Okay, fine. But at its core, when you open up your application on a phone, when you go on a web browser, whatever it is you do, sometimes it's badging through these doors. Use the DNS. In one way, it's really stupid. We shouldn't be overloading a simple application to do everything like open a door or to get into a bathroom or something. On the other hand, we do it because it works, and we do it because it scales. And that makes the DNS a very, very fundamental part of how we use the internet. So what is my point to this whole thing? Well, Lehman talked to us earlier about the trust anchor, the root trust anchor, because in the DNS, so many of the names in it are signed. They're cryptographically signed. They're DNSSEC keys. And those keys are validated. And if that doesn't work, if that somehow fails, all sorts of things break on the internet. Like badly. You can't go to a whole lot of sites and you can't do a whole lot of things. So at the root of this entire system is the trust anchor. And these keys turn out to be super, super important. And that's what I want to talk about today. Not the keys themselves. I want to talk about how we secure these keys. So there's a lot of press out there, a lot of marketing that talk about 7 keys to the internet. There's 7 people in the whole world who hold the keys to the signing key of the root zone, which makes them the 7 people with the keys to the internet. Well, there are 7 people. There's actually 7 people times 2. And then there's 7 people times 2 behind that with backup keys. But there are 7 people who hold one physical safety deposit box key. And inside that safety deposit box are credentials, which if you were used together would enable the operation of a hardware device, which generates signatures. So let me explain. I'm going to skip past these slides because we've already talked about them. But we are talking about the private key that is used to sign the next level key, to sign the zone. that gets us at the very top of the hierarchy. And in order to keep this thing safe so that nobody can get at it, so it's not found in a dump file somewhere, we need special procedures. We need special procedures to keep it secure. So, whoa. Skip ahead there. So how do we secure it? We're going to do level upon level upon level of security abstraction. And the first level we have is the hardware security module. Now, hardware security modules take lots of shapes. They have lots of different, there's lots of different manufacturers. They have different software and, again, different physical forms. But that's what our HSMs look like. And as I said, you know, the purpose of the HSM is to secure these things. The device itself is tamper-proof. And what I mean by that is if you have physical access to the device, if you try and mess with it to try and get inside of it, it faults. And once it faults, it can't be used again. If you try and take it and put it in your car, it's going to fault. It has sensors. The whole thing is that when you take out an HSM, you're careful with it, you put it on a table, you quietly use it, and you put it back. Because if you don't, it will literally self-destruct. To get to the contents of the HSM, to get to the secure key, you need a smart card. What we've done is we've broken up the key into 7 different smart cards. And you need 3 of them in order to turn this thing on and actually use it. And so what we do is we give these 7 smart cards to 7 different people. These people are part of a trusted community. We have a process that's well vetted by the community, and the community is everybody who wants to be involved. We have a process by which we select individual human beings to be one of these 7 trusted community representatives. These are people who you know, or people who experts in the community know. Here in Scandinavia, we have 2 experts from the region. One is named Pia Gruvo. She is a 28-year military cryptographer for the government of Sweden, a recognized expert who has been keeping secrets for her government for a very long time. The other one is Christian Orman from Internet Stiftelsen, who used to run .dk and now runs .se. This is a person well known in DNS circles. So Pia and Christian have some of these smart cards. And again, as I said, in order to access these keys, when we want to use the keys to sign other keys, we have to bring everybody together into a ceremony, which means we actually have to have physically everybody together, because each of these people owns the safety deposit box key, the physical key, that allows you access to here. Let me explain. We have a safe, a very big, heavy safe. And inside the safe is the HSM. And there are only 2 people in the world who know the combination to the safe. And we change the combinations periodically. There's only 2 people. And the safe, again, is monitored. It has seismic monitors and other sensors that will alarm if someone tries to get into the safe. There's also another safe sitting right next to it. I'll show you pictures in a minute. We put the smart cards inside the second safe. But the second safe has safety deposit boxes inside of it. There are safes within the safe. And the only thing that the trusted community representative holds on their physical person, hidden somewhere, is the key, the physical key, to get into one of the safety deposit boxes. But that's not enough. I hold the other key. A couple of trusted employees of the organization, of which I'm one, have the second key. You need both keys to get, just like a regular safety deposit box, right? Okay, so 2 physical keys to get into the safety deposit box, to get one of the smart cards. That's only one part of the 7, which is inside of a safe, which is a different safe with a different combination, and different the 2 people who know the combination are different than the 2 people who know the other combination, okay? Those safes are in a cage. You can't get into that cage unless you have the right number of people who have biometric iris detectors and have a smart card of their own to just badge in and have a multi-digit code. So in order to get to the smart cards to enable the HSM, and you have to get to the HSM, you have to get through a door that needs 2 people with the right biometrics, the right security code, and the right passcode to get to the safe that the combination is only known by 2 people, and you need 2 safes, and then you need the other keys. So there's a lot of security there. But that's not enough. That cage is located in a room which has 2 doors, an inner door and an outer door. In order to get through the inner door to get to the bigger room, once again, you need 2 people with the correct biometrics, the correct smart card, and the correct combinations to get into the door. To get through the outer door, you need a physical key, just a regular key that you can put into a door. Okay, not the safest thing, except they're inside a data center. And I don't mean they're inside a data center. I mean they're inside of a data center that you can't find because it's not on a map. And the data center is guarded by men and women with guns because we're America. But seriously, they're guns. When you walk into this, I'm not a huge fan of guns, okay? That's just me. But when I walk into this facility, everybody's carrying a gun. These are people who are licensed and entrusted by our government and the corporation they work for to physically guard the data center from intrusion, and they have guns that they'll use to shoot with, God forbid. We've put 2 of these facilities, KMF, Key Management Facility. We've created 2 of these facilities that are in the United States for now. Maybe one day they won't be in the United States. One of them is in a place called Culpeper, Virginia. Virginia is where I happen to live. To get to Culpeper, you fly into our big airport, Dulles Airport, and then you get into a car and you drive to the middle of nowhere for about 2 hours. Then you drive an hour past that. It's in the absolute middle of nowhere. It's beautiful, beautiful country, hills, grass, trees, and it's really, really nice. But don't be hungry because there's nothing to eat out there. You're in the middle of nowhere in these secure bunkers, and one of those bunkers happens to have this data center, and this data center is guarded by the men and women with the guns, and they need all sorts of keys to get in. We've replicated the whole thing on the west side of the country of the United States in a place called El Segundo. El Segundo is just a neighborhood in Los Angeles. But that's actually kind of safe by itself because it's an urban setting. There's a lot of buildings in Los Angeles. It's really, really dense. You have to find the unmarked building that's not on the map to get inside. And then, of course, there's men and women with guns. So we're at the end here. We're just going to talk a little bit about what these key ceremonies look like. So what happens is about 4 times a year, all of these trusted community representatives and the people who have at least one person who has the combination to each safe, so 2 people, and the people who have the cards and the correct eyes, the correct irises to get in, they all show up. We all show up physically in the same location. And we need enough people in order to conduct the ceremony. The purpose of the ceremony is to sign new keys, right? It's not to sign the signing key itself. We keep that static for many years because all of the DNS resolvers around the world know and understand that key. So we keep that for a few years before we roll that over. We use it to sign other keys. And so we need a whole lot of people. But it's not just the people in the room, because how do you know you can trust the people in the room? Well, the whole thing is broadcast. The whole thing is broadcast online on YouTube. And if you are ever awake late at night and need to go to sleep, bring up one of these ceremonies in YouTube and watching it, because it makes watching paint dry exciting. There are some pictures here. The ceremonies, it's a bunch of people in the room who are following a script. There's Pia. There's me. I lead some of these ceremonies when they're on the East Coast of the United States. These are the safes. There's the HSM in safe 1, and there are the smart cards are in the safety deposit boxes in safe number 2. There's our HSM. You can actually see the keyboard. One of the counterintuitive parts about these things is the software for the HSM does actually require some passcodes in order to take signing steps. The password's 1122334455. Because that password's not interesting. You can't get to the HSM to type in that super secret password, right? So most difficult part of a key ceremony is I'm a big guy. I have a little bit of fat fingers. Typing 1122334455 about 100 times during a key ceremony, inevitably I fat finger it and I get it wrong and everyone goes, and I have to do it again. We follow scripts. The whole thing is scripted, and the script is published beforehand, and the script is published afterwards. The script is public. You can literally sit there, bring up the YouTube, and you can follow every step of the script. And the script is really detailed. Safe Security Controller 1, remove the existing safe log. Show the most recent page to the audit camera. Every time we're in the cage and we do things, we hold them up to a camera inside the cage so everyone online can see exactly what it is. The internal witness then provides the pre-printed safe log to Safe Security Controller 1. Safe Security Controller 1 writes the date and time, then signs the safe log. They verify the entry, they initial it. I mean, literally, if you breathe, it better be on the script. The purpose of the script, again, is to engender trust, because we're talking about a key that everyone on the internet needs to work and to not be compromised. We can't screw it up. Because I can't explain to my 8-year-old mother, oh yeah, we screwed up and now you can't do anything for a few weeks. She's not going to be happy with me. But seriously, we can't screw it up. So the whole thing, the whole purpose of these ceremonies, the way they're designed, is to engender trust that we're doing the right thing as ICANN. We are doing the right thing as a DNS community. The trusted community representatives are doing the right thing. And then just the mechanics of it all. We're keeping everything safe and we're keeping everything secure. I talked about the process. It's streamed, it's recorded, and then we put the whole thing up on a web page afterwards. And you can watch ceremony 51 is coming up next in November. All the previous 50 ceremonies are on the IANA.org website for you to view. And that's it. Those are the kind of absurd, but kind of cool, but kind of fun, but mostly good way that we secure cryptographic keys in the real world to make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to work. That's it.
Any questions for David?
Sure. So just one thing I was wondering about here we're in Europe. I'm sorry, your mother probably know what the tram is, but for you, I'm going to explain it. It's some sort of car that can take multiple people. You would probably call it a car, but we call it a tram factor, which is the amount of people that could die in an accident and things would still work. So I see that you have 3 out of 7, but what kind of considerations are done with respect to securing contra the danger of people becoming unavailable?
So one of the trusted community representatives was Dan Kaminsky. You all know Dan. Dan died in his mid-40s, unexpectedly. And what's interesting about this process is we've kind of over-engineered it. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, actually, but it's really, really heavily engineered. I've just shown you all that, right? When we've been doing this since 2010, so we've been doing this for 13 years. And you know what the one thing we didn't consider in any of our processes was? What happens when somebody dies? And the problem, it depends on your jurisdiction, but Dan lived in the United States. And we didn't have the legal authority to take the key back from him. He was dead, but the key was in his possession. So the key was in his home somewhere. We didn't have the legal authority to take the key back. So we have lawyers, and those lawyers went through the court system, and a few months later, we got the physical key back. And what we figured out since then is it's really important, if you have one of these keys, that you need to tell somebody that you have one of these keys. You need to tell your spouse, you need to tell your child, you can tell your lawyer, you can tell your banker, tell somebody you trust, hey, I have this key, it's super important to the internet. If I die, a company called ICANN is going to contact you somehow, and they're going to ask you for the key back. Please give them the key back. Now, there's different ways you can do that, but it turns out to be a really important thing about holding one of these keys is you have to make plans for what happens if you die.
Yeah, kind of on the same point, like why 3 out of 7 specifically? Like, how did you decide on 3 out of 7?
I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know the answer to your question. That was decided back in 2010, and we've kept that. One of the problems is these people are all over the world, and we actually have to fly them to the same location. We have to fly them to Culpeper. We have to fly them to El Segundo because they have to be in the same location. You don't want too many more than 3 because it's hard to get people together, especially when we don't rotate too often. We're already choosing fairly senior members of the community. Being a fairly senior member of the community typically means you're busy, right? So it's just a matter of, in some respects, it's going to be a matter of convenience. It's hard to get everybody there. 3 is a pretty good number. Maybe there could be a better number. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
Yeah, a little bit more about the death scenario. You talked about the keys and stuff, but I noticed there was only 2 people who knew the combination to the safe.
Yes.
So isn't there a high likelihood of both of them dying, and what happens then?
So the physical safe has other problems. It's a mechanical device, and it can and does and has in fact failed. The good news with physical safes, however, is that they're not impregnable to drills. There's all sorts of security built in to ensure that no one's messing with it in an unauthorized fashion. But nothing stops us from properly getting into the facility, properly getting into the cage, bringing in a locksmith and having them drill the locks, which we've done. Because sometimes the combinations don't work. Now, these things are cool. I don't have one with me, but you have to prime these things. These locks, they're heavy. You turn them. You have to turn them at least 40 times just to turn the thing on to prime it. And then you enter the combination. And the combination isn't 2 to the right, 1 to the left, 1 to the right. It's actually really, really complicated. But if it fails, or if the safe security controllers aren't available and we need to get into the safe, or if they've died, we literally just drill the safe, install a new lock, and off we go. Okay, now Tor is asking a question, and now I'm officially nervous. Okay, here you go. That's fine.
Yeah, just following on the redundancy and resilience line of thought here, I have 2 small questions. And the first one is what you do, how you would deal with the situation, for example, during COVID, where there was mobility issues. The other one is how you deal with kind of technical errors either related to the smart cards or the HSMs.
So COVID, yeah, COVID really screwed us up. COVID screwed us up because we had no way of getting the trusted community representatives or the staff, by the way, the people who know the safe codes, the people who have access with the eyes and the smart cards and the codes. We had no way of bringing everybody together safely. We sign keys for approximately an 18-month timeline. They have 18-month validity. the signatures. We try and rotate them every 12 months. That gives us a 6-month window of padding, right? There was just enough time between the time when we stopped. Tony, what's up? Okay. There was just enough time. This one? Yeah. All right, cool. There was just enough time when we had the key ceremony in November to get us to the following April. That was April of 2021. So we lucked out a little bit on the timing. Then what we did, we didn't want to go quite that long. So what we were able to do at the 12-month mark is bring the people who are comfortable, find 3 of them, and the staff, bare bones, okay? No other physical witnesses. We wore masks, we socially distanced everywhere. We did the best we could in a small space to keep us safe, but we had to generate new keys, okay? So COVID was a bit of an issue, and not a bit of an issue. COVID was a major issue. One of the things we were able to do is, and I'll try and make sure I'm accurate with this, some of the TCRs were able to, the keys are kept in tamper-evident bags, okay? And we show you during the ceremonies that the tamper-evident bags, we go through a procedure to show you they haven't been altered in any way. Some of the TCRs were able to take their cards and mail them to someone who was going to be there or to a staff member. And during the ceremony, we were able to show, hey, Carlos in Uruguay mailed us his key. Here's the tamper-evident bag. I can verify nothing has touched it. It's not open. Hey, can you do that? Yes, I verified. Okay, everyone, we see this is not tampered with. Then we open it, then we use it, right? What was your second question? The hardware. Yes, the HSM. Well, guess what? Earlier this year, the manufacturer of the HSMs that we chose, which are about $35,000 US each, informed us that we've decided to make them end of life and we're not going to support them now. What? Now? You mean 2025, 2026? No, now. For business reasons, they decided to stop supporting the HSMs. That sucks. That's a real problem because these things are expensive. We rely on these things and we need to use these things. So now we have to go find new HSMs. So the first thing we did is we bought a whole bunch of them. We grabbed a whole bunch of the ones that were still in existence. We grabbed them, we have them. We can use them for another year or two because we think they'll be okay. They won't need support. Meanwhile, we're out there at the trade shows now trying to find FIPS 4 compliance. As I understand it, that's really hard to get. So we're looking for an HSM vendor that has a FIPS 4 compliant hardware module and it's of the same form. It's a box. Most HSMs are a 1U or a 2U or a 4U server because you put an HSM in a rack. That's what you do with an HSM. We don't put HSMs in rack. We put them in safes. So it's not an obvious use case. So great question, very timely, very difficult to plan for. Yeah. We just had, I don't think this is working anymore. What's that? It is working. Okay, one more question.
Yes. So you said that so you come to that facility like 4 times a year.
Yes.
And so seems like those guards are working there the whole year. It must be like the most boring work in the world.
So, good question. So the guards aren't just guarding our key management facility. They're actually guarding a large 1 million square foot data center. And in that data center are lots of other people. In this case, they're all US government things. This is where the secure stuff goes. But there's a lot of traffic into and out of the data center. They're not bored. It's funny though, because you go to a data center to rack and stack stuff. Who does it? You. Sometimes you bring a colleague. because sometimes you need two of you. But for the most part, I think if you think about all the times you go into a data center, it's just you. You're just racking and stacking and plugging in computers and doing a couple of things, right? We don't bring one or two people to a key ceremony. We bring 20. And so all of a sudden you're sitting there, you're at the front desk, you're a guard, and all of a sudden 20 people walk in. They all want to get authenticated. We have to go through metal detectors, bag checks. It's just like going to the airport. 20 people all have to get through the front door in order to get into the data center. So for them, when we show up, it's fun because they got a lot of work to do. All right, that's the end of our workshop today. Thank you all for coming. I hope you found it interesting. Thanks to our speakers, Arne Tobias, Liman, Tor, and thank you all for coming out and have a wonderful day.